Okay folks, welcome to Leon's Chainsaw Parts and Repair. We are back looking at Chantz's 925. This is the one we did the red coat on yesterday. And I want to show you. So that's what we had left. I let it drain upside down. It was sat there for almost 24 hours. Now I've had snot stringers bigger than this before that form from it, but whatever you know, doesn't matter. Just trim off right up here at the top. And you can see that stuff's still pliable. I wouldn't put gas on this yet. But I wish I'd clean this fuel cap up first. But I didn't. That's okay. Let's test fit this cap. Alright, now I can feel the rubber against it. Or red coat against it, but it went down. You know what? We're going to call that good. That's not bad. That's not bad at all. Wow. I'm happy with that. I don't think you guys will be able to see in there real well. Right there. You can see the red. That's what that liner is. It's pretty thin. You know, it's probably thicker at the bottom, but not much, because, like I say, it was sitting upside down. So anyway, that's what red coat job ought to look like. Now, I want to clean the rest of this saw up before going too much further, because it's kind of an atrocious mess. But I do want to get a fuel line in here, because I don't want debris and water getting into this fuel tank now. We got it taken care of. We don't want to mess it up again. So I'm going to go ahead and install the fuel hose here. Now there is a video somewhere out there from about a year ago where I did this installation. I'm trying to remember. It might have been Hal's 925, but it was definitely a 925 where I used this kit that I have for sale, and I install it. And it's a good video simply because if you're buying one of these and you're looking at those two grommets that come with it going, there is no bloody way that that's going to work. Don't worry, it will. It will absolutely work. Just have to use a little bit of finesse. Let me grab some grommets. Okay. The first thing we're going to do is get a grommet. I suppose that's about as good as it's going to get. No matter what, you're not going to totally see this. Because even if I had the camera closer, my big fingers would be in the way. First thing you want to do is install your grommet in the tank. And what I like to do is tilt it to one side, get one edge started, and then just carefully with this little flat blade get the rest of it worked down into place. There we go. When it sits flat like that, that's when you know you're good. And then use my super scientific chunk of wire here, fish it through, come out the filler neck, and we're going to punch a hole in the angled tip of this hose. Nothing super aggressive, just enough to get the wire through. And then crimp that end and get a little lubricant on the hose. And my wife is in the background being naughty, making fun of what I'm saying. Might be one of the reasons I married her, you never know. So get your wire, start guiding it into place. I will put this on edge as long as I can make it stable. maybe you guys will see a little more of this. Get it started right there and just keep tension and watch as the hose starts to go through that grommet. At first it's going to pucker and distort a little bit. Good thing she didn't hear that. But then once it's pulled through a little bit, it's going to go pretty smoothly. Just keep constant even pressure, nothing too extreme. Alright, we're going to stop right about there. And then pull your wire out, nip the tip, get the angle cut off, and you're good to go. On the air box, it's going to be the same way for this upper fuel hose. But I want to put a washer back on this filter to help hold it down in place. Hey, this is a family show, you gotta behave.
You heard that?
Oh yeah, that's going out on YouTube. Busted! So, this style of filter, in most of the IPLs it shows a washer there. I think this is a number 10? Maybe it's number 12. I think it's number 12 actually. Super common, cheap washer. Alright. Again, my goal is to get this to where I can hose the damn thing off. So for now, I'm going to drop this in the tank. And I'm going to use one of my other caps that I have. It's a little less funky and doesn't have a chain on it. Just to seal that up. Yeah, it feels pretty good. That's not bad. So I'm going to need to block this intake off, and I'm going to turn the camera off while I do some cleanup on these various parts, and then we'll come back for the rest of the assembly and diagnosis. Okay, I think I took as much of a bath as the saw did. Love it. So, notice this on disassembly. That starter pawl spring is broken, so let's get that thing replaced. Now you'll note, this doesn't have a screen on the flywheel. Not all of them did. In fact, most 925s, in fact, I don't think any 925 should have a screen on the flywheel. That's why these studs have nothing up above. But that meant that the starter was supposed to have a screen wrapped around here, and for whatever reason that is missing. I don't know if this was a new old stock part that never had it installed or what, but I'm going to see what I can do to locate one, because one way or the other you need a way to prevent stuff from going through those fins and getting into the flywheel fins, because that's a great way to just destroy a flywheel and potential hazard. I mean, you shouldn't have a kid around, but when you're sawing wood, but even you, if for some reason your hand slips, your finger goes through there, you're going to lose the tip of it. And I really don't think that's anybody's idea of a good day. Certainly isn't mine. Okay. If this one's the same, it should go right about there. And there's really no magic to these things. Get it started, but you're not going to get your final adjustment, so to speak, until that stud is in quite a bit ways further than this. Because what you've got to do is make sure that spring doesn't get caught under here, and then make sure that the pawl moves it freely. Which, look at that, that one is not still, even with a new spring on there. So, time to put a little goop in. And I love that phantom switch on this light. I think that actually helps the quality of the video, having that on. I know when I'm photographing used parts, between it and the overhead one here, it really helps. Alright. Hey, what do you know? PB Blaster comes to the rescue again. No big surprise. It's good stuff. Alright. Starter rope looks fine. So we're going to go ahead and put the starter on. I want to button some of this stuff up before we move on, just to kind of get less crap laying around my garage and workbench that I can potentially lose. Now, I don't know which hole that one came out of, but there's a lot of something in the threads. So bear with me for a minute. I'm going to use my bench grinder and wire wheel to clean those threads up. Well, we may find out that didn't work. That is magnesium. Somewhere, one of these holes is going to be in rough shape. It may be one we have to helical oil. We will see if it shows its ugly head. I'm just using a dental pick type tool, getting where I can see an edge and just kind of prying out this material. Except that last piece is going to try and corkscrew like a pair of threads. That's great. There we go. Alright. Damn that light. Guess that's the best quality you can buy at Home Depot. Let's see if these all tighten down appropriately. Okay. Didn't go crazy on them, but good compression, no drag. So I went back, reread Chance's email, and he said this thing would run, it just wouldn't run for long. He put this new carburetor on. This is a Walbro WJ27. This was the most advanced carburetor available on one of these 925s. So it is governed. You can see that little bad boy right there, but it does have an adjustable high and low, so you at least have some control over your high speed. But it's not going to let you lean it out to the point you can burn it up in theory. Now, I'm pretty sure I've already figured out, looking at it, what the heck's wrong with why it wouldn't run right. It had the Tillotson style gasket in there, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I'd love for that light to come back. Do you guys see in the video this? There's an edge here. That's the nut that's pressed into the intake manifold or heat dam, whatever you want to call this. I'm hitting it. I shouldn't be able to do that. I'm coming in from the top, from the side, from the bottom. This damn nut is pulled out. And on this side, I see what I think is a crack. Well, no, let's take that back. I know it's a crack. So, that was unfortunately a common problem. If you over tighten the carburetor studs, you either crack the manifold, or this is the first time I've actually seen a nut pulled. Apparently you can pull a nut, and again, I'm glad my wife didn't hear that one. Boy, this video is just full of fun stuff. Now, we should be able to get this out without pulling this throttle handle. It's a tight fit, and those are Phillips screws with a slot for flat blade, but usually there's just enough stinking room to get in there, and if you're careful, you can get them to come loose. Now, there is no room to spare, I can tell you that much. There's 3 of these. This one I started with at the top is the biggest pain. Least amount of clearance. If you get that one to come out, you should be able to get the rest. And I mean, it rubs on the throttle handle here all the way out. You're going to see a few little chips fly. But it came out. So these other 2, oh man, love it. These other 2 are lower enough if you had a good impact, you know, like one of these DeWalt's with a bit that wasn't all jacked up, you could come in here and gently power them out. You don't want to go hog wild and rip the head off. I've had to, again, I don't remember whose saw it was, but one of these things had a broken screw here, and I had to drill it out and re-tap it. I got it aligned right, but whew, it wasn't any fun. You can waste several hours screwing around with, excuse me, something like that when it goes wrong. Okay. It's still kind of dirty. Let me blow the gobbledygook off this real quick, and I can show you up close what's happened. This saw is actually lucky that it doesn't have a scored piston. In fact, we're going to check that in a minute. So here is our 2 problems with this intake manifold right there. You can see how that's lifted and pulled out. So the gasket would have folded down and tried to conform in here, but the carburetor base isn't going to go down there, and that gasket's not thick enough to seal that up. Big leak all the way around there. This side's starting to pull out too, but there you can see that big stinking crack, and it goes all the way in. So that's just an air leak in progress, and it looks like that crack is starting to try and follow down. Eventually this whole thing would have disintegrated if the saw hadn't seized before then. In all likelihood, that piece is the reason this saw is sitting in my shop. But let's pop this muffler off, and we'll just see if it did any damage. My guess is Chantz already had this off and had already checked this. But for my own gratification, alright. That's good news, folks. Let me get this up to right about there. Oh, there we go. Went a little farther past. Let's give me an opportunity to blow a little bit of water out of there and some more garbage off of here. And there you can see, piston's fine. Thin ring, exactly like it should be. So, we're in good shape. What I need to do is that I don't think I've got one of these in stock. Don't think I do. So we're going to stop. I'll see if I can locate one. If not, I'll order one. And then we'll have to come back to this repair and test run. Okay, good news. I had forgotten. I have the remnants of that VI-925, Tom's old saw. We took a look at that a couple weeks ago, the one with the exploded connecting rod. It did not damage the intake manifold. So I can rob parts from it to repair this one for now. That saw is not done though. Tom decided he didn't want to spend what it was going to take to get it back into shape, and I don't blame him one bit. It was, what I quoted him was a fairly astronomical number. Excuse me. So I bought the parts from him, you know, a little deal that worked out good for both of us, and my intention had been to part it out. And that probably would still be the smartest thing to do, but I'm not always the smartest guy. So a friend of mine got a hold of me last night and he's like, hey, I'm working on this 944. And we just started kind of chatting back and forth, and he had already offered a cylinder for this saw when he saw the video come up at a reasonable price, a good price actually. And I'd already taken that into account. Well, he ended up with a piston that fits the cylinder, but it's not what he wants. Homelite superseded some of their pistons to a single ring piston, and that was primarily used in the concrete saws, the XL-925, stuff like that. But the parts interchange for the original 955 piston and 944 shows up in the manual as changing to this single ring piston. So he ended up getting one of those shipped in. The seller didn't make him aware of that. Whoop. Anyway, long story short, he didn't want to use it, and I don't blame him. But at the same time, I don't have a problem with using it. I'll run it a little bit, make sure everything's good, but those concrete saws were severe duty, so I'm going to put that 955 back together, and eventually, after I've run it a little bit just to make sure everything's good, it's going to go up for sale. So I already have a VI 955 in my collection that I'm quite happy with. Excuse me. Alright, that intake is going to go in the receptacle where it belongs. So let's see, this saw is going to need a lot of different stuff. I mean, I'm looking at this clutch. Those shoes are pretty worn. It might still grab, I don't know. But I'd love to hear this thing run today and hear it run right. So let's get the remnants of this old fuel hose out. And it is a tight fit through there, but we're going to see if we can pull this new hose into place. Now there's an order here that I personally think works a little better. The hoses I send you are going to be a little bit too long from the very beginning, and that's on purpose. I want you to have extra so that when you cut the angle tip off, it's still long enough. But also, in a case like this, having a little slack is not a bad thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull this fuel hose. It goes, this is one of those pipe systems. So originally, I guess I'll back up. Originally, the hose in the tank was molded with a grommet. Right here, it was all one piece. This pipe just plugged into it. And then you had your chunk of hose that ran from the pipe up to the carburetor neck. We're going to do that same basic thing here, but utilizing a grommet and a hose, we'll slip this on far enough up to the bend there, and then what you do is you work this in just so that flare on the pipe just gets past the grommet on the inside. And then you've achieved the same thing, but you don't have to rely on either an expensive Homelite packaged hose that may or may not be good, or buy one of the aftermarket ones, which almost certainly isn't going to be good for long if you even get it into place. I've tried to use a couple of those and they tear. The rubber just is not a high quality. I have to assume it's some low grade stuff that's made overseas. It's just not any good. This is a much better solution. So anyway, I'm going to want to pull it this way, and I'll show you guys why in a minute. Those air boxes are tight, and trying to get the hose on the carburetor can be a lot of fun, and I don't mean good fun. So if you do it this way, you can actually hook the hose up to the carburetor, bolt it in place, and then we'll finish out here, and there'll be a little bit of slack, so that in the future, as you take your carburetor on and off for any reason, you'll have something to work with. At least that's my theory. And I know it works fairly well. Alright. Let's see. I guess you guys can see that. I'll see if I can do this with this line of sight without popping this grommet loose. Get it started just like before. And I'm twisting the hose back and forth a little bit here to help relieve the friction. Now you can pull too hard and pull this wire right out of that hose, and I'm at risk of doing that right now. I'll stop and get my real thin nose needle nose pliers here and give it a little hand. This is not going to go well, I can already tell. This angle. Oh, there we go. Nope, didn't go. That's okay, because I think I see, yeah, that grommet's no good anyhow. It actually started tearing out. That's unfortunate. Homelite did not leave enough room on these particular models. Maybe for the absolute original hose, it was just enough, but if that hole was even a 32nd of an inch further towards the clutch drum, it would make this so much easier. Come on, baby. What happens, God dang it, it's the edge of this grommet. Cannot see what the hell I'm doing. Edge of the grommet ends up hitting over here on the fuel tank. And therefore, it doesn't want to roll into place like it should. Come on. Not usually this stubborn now. Damn it. Get in there, you miserable bastard. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. Come on. Just go through. There, finally. Mostly. Not all the way, though. And this process should reseat it. See if we can make second attempt to work any better. Pulling it at such an odd angle, not being able to get a straight pull, does not help. I know that. Come on. You get in there. Boy, everything wants to fight me today all of a sudden. It's usually a sign that it's time to say to hell with it, do something else. I really love to hear this run. Again, get a little more oil on it. Okay. Now the trick is to get it to go through without popping the grommet, without tearing the hose like I did before. Ah, yes. There it goes. That's what it should have done the last time. There's enough hose there to get a grip on it. Pull some more through. I know it's lubricated, so again, a slow, steady pull ought to make it happy. Come on, baby. Alright, that's close to where we want it. Now this carb does look brand spanking new. I'm going to try it the way it is. So let's index our throttle and slip this hose onto the barb. And that's why we did this in the order that we did. Then we'll pull a little more through so she lines up. There we go. Almost there. Now this saw has got some stuff that's happened to it. Somebody's worked on it and left some various fasteners and all kinds of stuff out. These two upper airbox screws are missing. And I'm not a big fan of that. I noticed it earlier and forgot to do anything about it. I'm going to go ahead and... God, I hope they're not broken off. Wouldn't that just be the pits? One down. Hell of a lot easier to do this now than when the carburetor's installed. Nice. Okay. Minor distraction, but worth the time to do it right. Now I would love for that screw to start on the carburetor. There she goes. Doesn't pay to force these. Take your time and do it right. When it gets annoying, if it gets too annoying, like I say, that's the part, if I find myself getting too pissed off, time to quit. Out of the way. Alright, so these are 5/16, just like almost every other Homelite carburetor screw, and they don't need to be torqued like they're a head bolt. You want to compress the gasket, no more. We don't want to crack this intake like the last one was. I think a lot of these saws met their demise that way because the carburetor couldn't begin to compensate for an air leak as big as what that was. I'm glad this one didn't suffer that fate. Alright, we're almost ready to at least give this a test fire. Alright, so for the rest of this fuel pipe setup, let's get our fuel cap back out, fish that hose back out, so we got something to pull on. Alright, so this is a great time to get this installed, and if this is a pain in the butt, you can always lube the pipe up with a little bit of oil. That's water. Thought might have been some oil dripping. Alright. Trick is not to get it on your hands, or then you just have a slippery mess. Especially on a cold day like this, even the Tygon is a little bit stiff. Okay, it's started. Now we can work things into place. Now, I like to come out pretty far on this pipe. Okay, that should be good. And then we're going to get it as close as we can without actually pulling it into place yet. Right there, that's right at the start of the pipe. And then you're going to trim this hose so that you want it to overlap a little more than an inch. Because we're going to leave a little slack back here like that in order to facilitate getting the carb on and off again in the future. And we'll lube the pipe up here a little bit. This side should go a little easier, I think. And we're going to go on a good 3/4 of an inch, if not an inch. And if things are too much of a hassle, you get needle nose pliers number 2. Okay. That doesn't look terrible. I like that. That amount of slack right there is not going to get caught in the chain or get down where it doesn't belong, but it's enough to facilitate that carburetor coming loose in the future. I send you guys a good 5 inches of hose here. Probably 4 is more than enough, but again, it gives you a little extra work with here. Gives you a little extra if the angle cut pulls as you're kind of fishing it into place the first time around, like we saw happen to me. Alright, so the last part, getting this through the grommet, is the most, I won't say tricky part, but you don't want to pull that grommet. So get a little lube in there, and then start pulling on this hose while you're working it down. Now I'm going to get the bubbles to go away here. Okay. That's about the best view. Oh, dang it. Best view I'm going to be able to give you guys and still be able to see what I'm doing. So one side is going to likely start first. And then you're just going to keep rocking it. And I'm pulling hard. But I'm watching that grommet to make sure it doesn't pull inward. Oh, there it goes. See how quick that was? It just boom, right into place. I hope my big head wasn't in the way for that. But I was pulling hard right here, wobbling this, and shunk, sucked right in. That is what you want right there. Now, I haven't been thinking this whole time. I'd like to hear it run, but I don't think. I can still smell that. We're not putting gas in there. Not yet. And I don't have a bottle rigged up right now. I'll have to get that taken care of. So, I'll just pause the video. I won't even post this yet. I'll wait until I can actually do something a little bit more. But we've made good progress. We do have the fuel filter in place, fuel hose, carburetor. You know this thing's going to run. It's going to run. But other things that it needs, I want to talk to Chantz. This muffler, at least that cap, even the chrome, that's one decrepit looking pile of crap. So I'll see if he wants to replace that. We were missing our spitback filter off of the air filter mount. The air filter cover itself is missing the guides down here that would make it suck down a whole lot better. The filter is a distorted mess, so I can order one of those in. Sprocket is shot completely, and I'll see what I can do about locating some clutch shoes. Those are not easy to come by. The what was it, 550, and these late model 925s are the only ones that use those shoes. Might be easier to convert this thing back to a big 6-shoe clutch. Easier and more economical. So anyway, I'll kind of figure some of that crap back out, and when we come back on this saw, it will be ready to put fuel in that tank and give it a test fire. Okay. Obviously, curiosity got the best of me, and I know this is the world's worst auxiliary fuel tank ever, but it did the trick. So, these governed carbs, especially on these saws, are pretty aggressive. I have the high-speed jet completely closed right now, and that governor is taken over, and there's still enough spit back in here to make some wetness, because it's bouncing off of that maximum. When I had the screw open, what it would do is it was sitting there bouncing off of the high end, and bah, 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 almost like one of these computer-controlled cars that has a rev limiter, you know, where you're sitting there in park, you can't sit there and rev it to the moon. You know, it's not like my old 65 Chevy where if I wanted to, I could put the pistons through the hood. So, anyhow, once I got the carb dialed a little bit, then it started acting a little bit more normal, which is what you just heard there. Idle's still a little high, but that's crap I can tinker with later. Long and the short of it, I wanted to prove that it would run and idle on its own, and I suspect that what it just did there was longer than what Chantz was getting it to run with that old cracked intake manifold. So, I've come full circle. I will put this video up now because I'd really like him to see the saw before I order any other parts for it and make sure that he's comfortable with where this is going.